Hello, everyone. This is Sabrina Paganoni. I'm joining from the Healy Center for ALS at Mass General. I know we're giving people a few seconds, and it takes a few seconds to join us from the waiting room. As always, today, I'm here with our patient navigation team. We have both Alison and Catherine here with us tonight, which is great. And then if we can go to the next slide. Tonight, I'm very happy to have as guest speaker one of our new PIs, Dr. Kushlaf from University of Cincinnati, is obviously very experienced with trials, but new to us, to the platform trial. And as you know from participating in these webinars, we're really excited that more sites wanted to join. So thank you so much, Dr. Kushlaf, for wanting to participate, for really doing a lot of work to get activated right away for the platform trial. Really excited to be working with you. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sabrina. Can you move on to the next slide, please? Thank you for the opportunity to present our ALS clinical and research teams at the University of Cincinnati. Can you move on to the next slide? So we cover a large geographic area in terms of referrals and consultations for patients with ALS. We see patients from Southern Indiana, from Southern Ohio, and from Northern Kentucky. We typically see consultations and referrals at the University of Cincinnati Gardner Neuroscience Institute in the picture on the left of the slide. And then the multidisciplinary clinic, we have it at the UC Health Daniel Drake Center. Can you move on to the next slide, please? Our ALS multidisciplinary clinic team is headed by Dr. Robert Neal. He's the director of the ALS Clinic. Dr. Jackie Janisic, she joined us a year ago, and she's covering some of the multidisciplinary clinics. If you can see in the picture on the left side, just below Dr. Neal is our physical therapist, Abby Human, occupational therapist. Next to Dr. Neal, Connie Buddha, speech therapist, Courtney Ness, and then moving to Yvonne Dressman as a social worker, Caitlin Dexon as a nurse coordinator, and then a respiratory therapist, Ann Compton. We follow on average 170 to 180 ALS patients. We are in the process of working with the system to get a genetic counselor to be part of the ALS clinic. Can you move on to the next slide, please? Our research team, I head the research team. I have 3 coordinators working with me. 2 of them are on the ALS research team. In the picture, you can see a senior research coordinator, Ashley Smith, and next to her is Elizabeth Gelman. We are thankfully part of the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial. We got to join Regime E. So far, we have a total of 8 patients that went through screening or are in screening for the master protocol, and 4 patients are already enrolled in Regime E. We have 2 small retrospective studies that are ongoing at the UC, and we're looking at the prevalence of causative genetic variants of ALS in our UC ALS cohort, and another one correlating the pulmonary function with prognosis in our UC ALS cohort. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I think this is all I have.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for joining. And we're happy to get to know a little bit about your center. There's actually a question for you about sort of your clinical practice and kind of your clinical research approach. How do you help families decide if participating in a clinical trial is a good decision for them?
Well, so far, as you know, we do not have a cure for ALS. And the current available therapies, they may slow progression, but not necessarily cure the disease. So there is a large unmet gap in terms of therapeutics for ALS. And that's basically the primary reason why patients actually choose to be part of clinical trials. In fact, when they hear about the data for the current available therapies of riluzole and edaravone, some of the patients, they don't even agree to take those medications. They prefer to be in a clinical trial protocol than to start those medications. So it's not difficult at all in talking to a patient about clinical trial in ALS. It's not the same as talking to a patient with a different neuromuscular disease about clinical trials such as myasthenia gravis, as you know.
So if somebody wants to join the trial or any of the other studies that you offer, who should they contact at your center?
So the process that we have right now is we have a shared list between myself, the ALS doctors, Dr. Neil and Dr. Yanisek, and the research coordinators who are working on the trial. And what happens, the flow is that the clinical team, they put patients on the list. Us, myself, I look at the patient and screen them initially for involvement in the trial. Sometimes there is an immediate exclusion criterion that you cannot actually put that patient in a clinical trial. But if they are eligible, then we basically call them and schedule them. If basically talk to them about, of course, screening for a clinical trial. And if they want to proceed, then we proceed with scheduling.
Great. And so maybe I'll ask Catherine if you have information about who to
contact.
Yeah.
Who to contact. You can either contact myself, and I'll be happy to give you my email, or my research coordinators who are working on the trial. And I can give you the email of my senior.
Excellent. So maybe during this webinar, you can maybe put it in the chat if you want.
Sure, absolutely.
So that we can share it.
Yes.
And actually you made a great point about, if somebody is eligible for trials, you facilitate enrollment in trials. So there is a question about people who are not eligible for trials. At this point, I see that you have a few other sort of, retrospective studies. Would you be interested in expanded access, other options for people who are not eligible for trials? Is that something? I guess I don't think it's available right now, right, at your center, but I guess
we do not have any expanded access programs, and that's part of it. Is we're really focusing on the clinical trials themselves because they require commitment from our research coordinators. So I probably need more research coordinators to be able to carry on expanded access programs. It is something that we consider and will probably be something that we will offer in the future. But at this time, I think we're pretty busy. We're already getting requests from nearby institutions, such as University of Louisville, to accommodate their patients to be involved in Regime E. So we're busy from our own side. We're getting referrals from other places. That leaves us no energy actually to invest in an expanded access program. So, but it remains something that we will consider, of course.
Yeah, you're pointing to a very important topic, which is the issue of resources at the site. So again, if I understand it correctly, you would be interested, but again, it's a matter of resources and having enough research coordinators to carry out all the programs that you have. Is that correct?
That's accurate.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. No, thank you so much. And let's go over the quick updates that we have, and then maybe we can go back to that, circle back if people have other questions for you. So at this point, we have been including up to 5 drugs in the platform trial. Right now, we are enrolling for regimen E. That's the regimen that Dr. Kushlaf mentioned. That's available also at the University of Cincinnati location. That's a trial of 3 ALOs. Next slide. And actually, I'm happy to report that we are now about 50% enrolled. So as you know, the regimen size for each regimen up to now has been about 160 individuals. And now we have sort of passed the midpoint. We have 81 individuals who have been randomized within regimen E. That means that they have started treatment with study drug, either active or placebo. But then a few more have actually already screened. And as Dr. Kushlaf was explaining earlier, there's sort of a process for screening. So there's, the sites are actively screening, like the University of Cincinnati. So we are really making progress in terms of enrollment, which is really great news. So thank you again, everyone. I know this is a very special time in ALS research. We have a lot of other activities going on, a lot of announcements, research news. But so thank you for participating in this specific regimen. Obviously, as it's important that we complete enrollment so that we can then proceed to analyzing the results. Next slide. And so with that, now we have more sites active. We added one since the last webinar, Nova Southeastern University in Florida. So one more Florida site, and the complete list is on the slide. And again, we have the different sites labeled in blue and green. As I mentioned earlier, we started with a group of about 50 sites. Those are the ones labeled in blue, and many of them are participating in Regimen E as well. But then we're very excited to include new sites, the green sites, like the location in Cincinnati, because we really want to continue to expand. And also there is, we want to give people more options to enroll. And as Dr. Kushlaf was rightly explaining, basically there's a capacity issue at the sites, right? Sites need to have enough resources to be able to enroll. And so it's great to have more sites who can enroll in new regimens, and we will continue to expand. Next slide. And as always, if you have questions, please contact Catherine and Allison, who are also on the line today. We have a great list of upcoming guest speakers. Next week, actually, I'm not going to be here because I will be traveling, but we have our colleague, Dr. James Ferry, who has been on this webinar before. He will focus on biomarkers and other updates from the platform trial. And we have other site investigators scheduled to join us, as well as our site monitors for the platform trial. As you know, if you've been following this program, we also want to bring on people who are doing research in different aspects of the research sort of infrastructure, so to explain and really unpack how research happens. And specifically on September 22nd, we will have Mariah and Megan. They are our wonderful site monitors for the platform trial. They will explain what site monitoring means. So essentially, all of these trials that are supposed to be registration trials. And so we want to collect data of very high quality. They do leverage a complex infrastructure, including site monitors that physically go on site. They go to all the locations. So if we have 50 sites, they go to 50 sites physically. They travel to verify the data quality. And there is a whole process for source data verification and really outcome certifications, etc. So we'll keep talking about those infrastructure topics as well. So with that, I think we can stop sharing slides and we can take a few more questions. So actually, there's a number of questions about drugs that are at different stages of development in other programs. So I'll sort of go through them quickly. They're not in the platform trial, but they are at different stages. So we have NU9, M102. Those are great programs in development. Again, they're not at the clinical stage yet, or there's no trial right now, but very excited to know that they are progressing. And so as trials are open over the next few months, obviously we'll keep you posted. I do want to put in a plug for our ALS link, since you are, again, there's many questions about research news in general. I think if you're interested in receiving periodic newsletter about ALS research, there are many resources available. I would obviously recommend our ALS link. I think the QR code, we share it during these weekly meetings. There's other great resources. The NILS Consortium has educational webinars. We presentations about clinical trial pipeline, as well as other groups from IMALS to ALS Association and other groups, TDI, etc. Now I won't be able to list them all because there's many, but everything ALS, and there's a lot of different groups that host wonderful webinars about new drugs. So I would certainly encourage you to follow those. There's one question about the cytokinetics drug in terms of the status. There's been webinars also on that. I think our colleague, Dr. Jeremy Scheffner, gave a webinar on that, I believe, with the NILS Consortium. All the webinars are recorded, so perhaps I can ask you, Catherine, if you can post the link to those recordings, because many of these webinars cover other drugs that are not in the platform trial, but are also very exciting drugs in development. So looking at other questions, so there's a question about regimen D, as in David, and so the question is if the regimen is making progress and when the results will be available in general for all the regimens. And so really we're looking at really the next few weeks. So please keep in touch, because we will communicate all these results also on these webinars as well. And then looking at other questions. Oh, there's a question about the picture behind my screen, if that's of Budapest. No, actually the picture behind me is a picture of Rome, and actually I'm going there tomorrow. That's why I'm not going to be on the webinar next week. So sorry, I'll miss that, but yes, I'm going back to Rome. I'm not from Rome, I'm from Milan, but I love Rome. So that's why I have the picture, and it's also available on Amazon. I should say for that's why I bought it. Other question, there's a question about again other compounds that are being announced, like terrazosine. It's been in the news. So I personally am not aware of anyone who started taking it for ALS. I don't know, Dr. Kushlaf, if anyone at your site has been taking terrazosine as part of kind of an off-label treatment. I haven't seen that yet.
No, we don't have anybody.
Yeah. So again, it's good that drugs are repurposed and tried. Obviously, the only way to know if the drug works or not is via trials. So it's going to be important to follow those as well. There's questions about use of CRISPR for C9 or 72 targeting. So I don't have any updates. I know that these programs are sort of in the preclinical stage, but I don't have news about trials specifically right now. And I see here that lots of helpful links and resources have been posted in the chat. And thank you also, Dr. Kushlaf, for sharing your email and the email of your research coordinator. So anyone in your area, obviously welcome to contact you. I'm very excited about all the, all the enrollment that you've had in Regimen E so far. That's really great. Any comments from you? Oh, actually, there's one question actually that was sent before. I promised I would take it. A question about the sigma-1 receptor. In regimen D, D as in David, that's the drug, that's the regimen testing predopidine, and that drug specifically targets the sigma-1 receptor. And so the question is, do you need to measure sigma-1 receptor activity in the participants of the platform trial to tell if basically the drug is effective or not? And there's a few few things we can say about that. So first of all, there is a webinar about the mechanism of action of predopidine. I know that the sigma-1 receptor was mentioned there. You're welcome to watch the recording. And you're correct that there's data suggesting that mutations in the sigma-1 receptor can confer risk or can be associated with worse prognosis in ALS. That said, it's not necessary to measure the sort of the activity in the individual participant. That's actually been done with some complicated sort of molecular neuroimaging studies that would not be practical to do in the context of such a large trial. But I would say that the main reason why this is not even necessary is that we have data to also suggest that the sigma-1 receptor is active in many ways of the central nervous system. So you don't need to necessarily measure it and only use, only include people that have decreased activity in the trial. We know that the receptor has multiple activities, and so by increasing essentially its activity, we think that there's data to, at least in the preclinical models, to suggest that there will be a great target for ALS. And again, more information is in the mechanism of action webinar, but it's not required to do that complex sort of PET studies or molecular neuroimaging. So there's a question about whether people in one regimen, in particular regimen C, can take riluzole, and yes, they can. But in general, I would say that that all the participants in the trial are allowed to take standard of care medication. And right now, in the US, standard of care medication includes riluzole and edaravone, whether it's IV or oral. And then obviously in the future, as new drugs are approved, the standard of care may change. But at this time, yes, we don't limit patients' ability to get access to FDA approved drugs. And that's important for us because again, we want people to be able to take what's approved, and then we sort of layer the experimental drugs on top of that. And specifically for C, if the question was, can they take it at the same time? Yes, they can. So Dr. Kushlaf, I'll turn over to you to see if you have any final comments or anything that you would like people to know about your site or the research that you do.
Well, I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to be part of the HEALEY Platform Trial. We are very excited to have all patients. We're trying to enroll as many patients as we can till we reach capacity. There is going to be capacity issues at the end. We're working on hiring a new research coordinator and having more faculty getting involved as investigators or sub-investigators in the trial, so that way we can increase our capacity. It's, the worst thing I think I can do is to tell a patient that we reach capacity and we can't enroll. That's
Right.
not something I want to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Great. Thank you so much. And we'll see. Well, unfortunately, again, I'm not going to be here, but Dr. Barry will be here next week. So thank you so much. And I'll see you in 2 weeks, but the webinar will be on next week. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Kushlaf, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.